Hey guys, Steve here, Ponics. Today we're going to talk about
Growing with fishes. Growing with fishes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 319. Hard to believe we're already hit that number. I feel like we just broke 300. We have a really cool guest for you guys today. Hopefully you guys can see everybody. I know sometimes we have, interesting, it's not showing him on the screen. He is here, we do have a speaker. We'll try switching back and forth and seeing if that doesn't work better. But we do have Irrazinig from Indian Landrace joining us today, all the way from India. So if you guys have seen any of the amazing videos from Afghanistan and Pakistan and some of the other incredible videos from his Instagram, definitely go check it out. We do have a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Did want to do a quick announcement. Thought I had the tab open and apparently I didn't. So let me throw this up here. Oh, wrong one. There we go. Just before we get started, be sure to go check out our different websites. Are running a fall sale right now. You can use code FALL for big discount on all of our classes. The Aquaponic Cannabis Masterclass at apmjclass.com. The Living Soil and Aquaponic Pest Control course at thepestclass.com, and the Aquaponic Mineral and Microbe Masterclass at nutrientclass.com. I'm sorry, nutrientclass.com. And that will be launching here in January. We have a whole new course for you guys, so be sure to check those out.
Sure.
Alrighty, guys. Thanks for watching. If you guys aren't familiar with our guest, let me pull up his Instagram here. He has one of the coolest Instagrams on the internet, that's for damn sure. And he brings us these incredible videos like he did yesterday of Afghanistan and some of the different projects that they're working on. I mean, you certainly don't see that type of phenotypical variation in most people's fields. It's one of the nicest things about going to landrace fields is just a huge amount of genetic diversity. Well, thanks a lot for joining us today. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody how you got started?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you so much for asking me to come over on the show. Really appreciate it, and my entire team as well. So I'm Irrazin. It's IG is just for like Instagram. So yeah, my name is Irrazin, and I'm one of the members of Indian Landrace Exchange. In fact, I was one of the persons who actually started the collective, but now it's a strong collective. There are a lot of people who work from different countries. That includes farmers, collectors, and people, who document academic stuff about the plants, which sometimes, farmers are not able to because, they have a different educational background. So, we have, all kinds of people now in this collective, and what they do is like all of them just, do their bit. And when it all comes together, it becomes like, like sort of an annual journey each year where we can show people, how crops are sown and then watered and tended to, how they're fertilized, how they appear at a certain stage, and then how they transition. And I mean, pretty much people are able to see a lot, which I believe, would have been different if we were speaking of, 10 years ago. So that's basically, what I do in this collective, along with, all the other members. So yeah, and all of our work is published on this page, Irrazinig, as you already showed it. So thank you so much for that as well. And most of the work is being published on this on a daily basis, and people can actually keep up with our journey if they wish to through Instagram.
So tell us a little bit about some of the different. It seems like you guys have access to so many different types of cultivars. Do you have any that particularly stand out in your mind? I know the red Marif that we're looking at here certainly is definitely one that I've seen a little bit in the U.S. In some crosses. But tell us a bit about some of the different cultivars that you guys have been working with, because you guys have so many amazing ones. I know I've been following your Instagram for quite a long time, and it's really exciting to finally have you on and tell us about it.
Yeah, so that's one of the more interesting things I would say is that being able to work with so many different plants from so many different regions, and different plants as in not say within one country, because let's talk about Afghanistan, for example. So if we're going to Afghanistan, surely there is diversity intra population as well, interpopulation as well. You go from one field to another field, you'll see some sort of differences, of course, in heights. But those are mainly because of how those crops have been brought up, and how they fertilize them, and pretty much they're shaped by the environment. So more than the people have to do with them. So going to a different country is really important. It really becomes important if you really want to see something different. Like yourself, you're in Thailand right now, and I'm sure you're experiencing all kinds of amazing long flowering plants. And I'm not trying to say that you must not have seen them in back in US, but Thailand, it must be everywhere, and so much variety. So it's just the very same thing for us as well. When we go to India, let's say we go to Malana, it's just a whole different kind of plant that we encounter over there. The smells are different, the appearance is different, the entire climate, cycle is different. It just rains a lot, and the snowfall comes in at a different time. And then you go to a different country like Afghanistan, you have a totally 180-degree flip. You have extremely dry environment, and absolutely no rains, and you have shorter flowering varieties, the plant that tend to stay short, because there's not so much moisture out there, to really grow out the way plants grow in India or other Southeast Asian countries. So it's really interesting to look at the contrast at the end of the day, when you're looking at plants from so many different countries. And you name Maruf red selection. That's the one from the year that was hunted in 2019, and then it was given out in 2020, early around New Year. And I've seen a lot of people were able to grow it, actually reproduce, preserve it, which was the goal, and then also incorporate this variety into their existing gene pool. For whatever reason they found it fit. And I just want to talk about that plant in particular, because it's such an amazing plant, and I think it's one of the best selection that we have been able to, bring in over the years that we've been working. And the fact that plant contain smell of, rotting flesh, the smell that you would generally associate with things like hydrogen sulfide, sort of like smells that smell of like rotting eggs and flesh. So that was quite new for us as well. So we were really excited, but the interesting thing was, like, people were already aware back in US and some in Europe. They already know, okay, plants, you would find plants out there that might have this kind of terpene profile, but it was just like a matter of actually finding them and actually experiencing those things that they actually exist. Was fantastic. Yeah.
What are some of the other interesting terp profiles that you've found so far? I mean, that one's the rotting meat and the sulfur sounds really interesting. What are some of the other ones? Because it's definitely not one that you see very often here in the US.
The one that is really common in Southeast Asia, and it's not in US, I would say, is those woody berry, flavors. I'm sure by now you must have, consumed a lot of Thai. Because I was seeing your Instagram, so you've been there for a while now. So you must be smoking a lot of Thai, local weed, and all kind of Landrace varieties from different provinces. So by now you must have figured out there's this weird, berry, woody, incense sort of mixed flavor per se, that's there. And it's very hard to, I've never been able to find that in, varieties that come out of US, because if they have a berry smell, it's a lot different. It's more like a candy berry. It's not really like an actual berry, or like an actual, fruit-like smell. It's more on a candy-like tangent. So, that's one of the differences that I've been able to, experience rather, when we consume varieties from United States, which were, bred post 2000 and all, and the varieties which have been growing here by traditional producers. So there are a lot of differences in terps, and that I think is one of the really interesting terpene profiles, the one that is really common in the longer flowering varieties, and it's just very hard to find in US.
What are some of the other traits that you see in the longer flower varieties? I think a lot of people in the US simply don't have a grow season long enough to try and experiment with some of these. I know, some of the ones that I've seen out here, are on month 4 of flower, and they're, probably have a good month and a half to 2 months left. People simply just don't have anywhere where they can grow something that large that long, unless they have a greenhouse, that's a personal greenhouse. So what are some of the other different traits? I know that you see a lot more stacking in the buds. You can see, to me, it seems like a lot of the longer flowering ones tend to have a lot more limonene or pinene in them, more of a pine smell or lemon smell in general, or at least having that flavor to them than the shorter flowered ones. What are some of the other traits that you've seen?
Yeah, so like it's a big problem. And like, first of all, US is like mostly located, and even like European countries are mostly located on higher latitudes. I mean, if not very high latitudes. So snowfall is like a common occurrence in most of the places where people are trying to get these seeds and trying to experiment with them. So yeah, it becomes a problem for them if they're trying to grow these varieties outside, because of the shorter season length. But I think there is a whole lot more. While there is a longer flowering period, there are a lot more out there in those genetics that people can look forward to, and they can perhaps overlook the longer flowering time. One of those things would be the survivability of the plant itself. Apart from everything else, the plant itself is able to survive on very, very minimal feeding. I mean, as a matter of fact, in most cases, you don't really need to feed the plant a lot, and they tend to really express, more or less in the same way. I mean, there's not much difference in the yields, or you wouldn't see the plant suffering for a certain nutrient, at times, while it's not really being fed all those, proper nutrients like most people feed their crops, which are like commercial crops. So that's like one of the things. But and if we even go further, and we want to talk about like even better characteristics which people can look forward to, and then can perhaps take them and introgress into their own varieties or own gene pool, would be the ability of that plant to withstand the wet and the humid environment. Because I think if you look at even in United States or in Europe, there are a lot of places that have wet environments. I mean, throughout the year, it stays wet. However, they have a slightly different situation. It stays wet and cold, opposed to the wet warm as you get in Thailand or in other tropical places. But what we have been able to see from the people who have grown these varieties, not Thai, because I personally do not deal in Thai varieties. But the other Southeast Asian varieties, like ones from the Burma or from Indonesia, or let's say from Laos and Cambodia, which are like neighboring countries, those varieties do really well even in wet and cold conditions. So we already know they're doing well in wet and warm conditions back at home. But even when they're grown in places like Pacific Northwest and like Northern California, where it's it tends to get like really wet and cold right around the harvest, and you even get like these rainfall around like October, I think, which is like every year. It's a short stint, but it happens on an annual basis. So these plants, if you can use them in your breeding, and somehow people can integrate those traits into their population, they can have varieties. They still flower shorter, but they would have qualities that they can be run outside without having to worry about the flower is going to rot, or the other issues that arise from wet conditions. So I think that's the biggest incentive out there to grow Southeast Asian varieties. And I think like Thai varieties are like really on the top when we're going to talk about Southeast Asian landrace cannabis. I think the first thing that comes to anybody's mind is Thai. So yeah, I think it's a great time to actually go ahead and like grab some like Thailand seeds and even seeds from other different areas, surrounding it, like Laos, Cambodia, Burma, even in India, like Manipur, and try to just experiment with them, see if they can get to introgress, those qualities into their own population, own gene pool. I think it could be hugely beneficial because I keep seeing people, growing outdoors, and they just have to cut prematurely because it starts raining. So yeah, I think I've seen that a lot, and this could really help.
Oh yeah, and I think Thailand has such a long tradition of being a place that has cannabis, and certainly during the Vietnam War and after that, really got to be known for having Thai stick and all the other stuff. So
Yeah.
certainly has that. The biggest, I guess, everything I've smelled so far out here, and that was actual landrace stuff. It didn't have any Western stuff in it. Was either lemonine dominant or had those mango terps. So we've still been doing some more
Yeah.
hunting, but I know Canada Seeds has had a lot of good luck finding some stuff that isn't quite so fitting into those
Yeah.
two categories.
Yeah. So this lemon profile you're speaking, I think that one's pretty common too, and it's more like a lemongrass. It's not really like like a lemony flavor as in you would find in the Afghani varieties or in the hybrid, not that kind of limeates. So like lemongrass sort of smell, and you could find that in like some of the Burmese varieties, but as we like go to like Laos and Cambodia, you get like more like berry and sweeter profiles along with like woody and incense or some at times sandalwood like smells. And yeah, I mean, as you move to like more highlands is where I believe more of these lemongrass, lemony, and piney scents would emerge. uh, as we've also experienced the same thing in India, as because all the terai and the flatlands have sweeter berry terps, and as we move towards the mountains, they tend to get a little astringent with a side of piney and sort of like, again, it's not like a full blown lemon, but it has a lemony and citrusy tang to it. So yeah, we can really see that the smells tend to like develop in that tangent as you go towards like a certain locale or terroir. So that's for sure, yes.
So you had mentioned Burma and Cambodian, and I forget
Yes.
one of the other Southeast Asian countries. What type of
Laos.
Malaysia, I think was the other, or Indonesia, I think you said. What are the different terpene profiles that you found in those types of cultivars? Are they pretty similar to Thailand, or are they very different? I know that little bit of stuff I've got that was Cambodian, the structure was completely different. The terp profile was completely different. They clearly didn't have as much experience growing. You could tell that by the plants as the guys in Thailand, but it certainly still had some uniqueness to it. And what are some of the things that you found?
Yeah, first of all, I think you mentioned it correctly that people in Cambodia and Laos, they're not as proficient in growing cannabis as you look at people in Thailand. And I'm not speaking about like the legalization thing that just happened. I mean, even if you go into the traditional arena, Thai farmers is just like way ahead of these guys. Anyways, but yeah, the wheat that comes from mostly from Cambodia and Laos, they mostly tend to have these like floral, berry, woody kind of flavors, and they're not very prominent. Again, that's the one thing that I would say, it's like a little drawback for Southeast Asian varieties, that the flavors, the intensity is not there. I mean, you really have to take the plant and stick it in your nose and try to smell it. And if you really want to get the flavors out of that smoke, it has to be cured properly, over at least 6 months. So those are like some of the problems with those varieties. But still, if you get to have like a fresh sample and you can just like test the resin and smell it. So like those are really the smells that we usually get from places like Cambodia and Laos, and even like Burmese. Burmese is like a lot more floral, actually, compared to Cambodia and Laos. And the varieties that come from Burma, they actually come from like sort of like mid highland sort of altitude around like 1200 to 1300 meters, while the varieties that coming out of Laos and Cambodia, they're more of a flatland, not so the altitude less than 1,000 meters. So I'm not exactly sure, how that's really making a difference, as there are so many factors influencing a plant's growth. But yeah, uh, these countries tend to have a lot less, hilly regions which people cultivate cannabis in. I mean, simply just area wise. I think Thailand has like a lot of highland territories where they're growing cannabis, and I think most of their variety, most of their cannabis, the crops, they come down from like actually mountains and places which are around like 1,000 meters in altitude. So they tend to have like a little different terpenes, and it also helps the farmers in a way, because it tend to be a little colder compared to if you're in the city Thailand somewhere. So that really just helps in the overall growth. So they don't really have to go through like a really extreme, like a really hot period, because they're in the mountains.
That's awesome. Is there anything that you do? We had another question from chat here. Is there anything that you do a little differently in terms of selecting males, or doing selections for breeding when you're working with these longer term land races and local cultivars, compared to the traditional ones? I know it's one of my favorite questions to ask people is, how do they pick a male? Because every single person has given me a different question out of the like 200 that we've asked so far on the show. So I'd love to hear your explanation, because you see a lot more variety, I think, than most people on when it comes to that.
So I haven't really started working with hybrid varieties yet. I do, I do want to, but I think I just don't really understand, the varieties so much better. So I feel a little intimidating using them. What I do feel comfortable is like land races. I understand a lot more about them, and I feel a lot more comfortable using land races because I know where they're from, and how they behave in a certain climate, in a certain temperature and all that. So it's really easy, when you have seen the plants out there, and you bring them in, you sort of have this field guide already about those plants. So what we as far as the male, selecting a male is concerned, I have a very simple strategy when I'm selecting for male, and that is only because I'm in the initial parts of my breeding and selection work, and that is I'm mostly in breeding stuff. And I'm when I'm looking in landrace, mostly what I'm doing is I'm doing the selection from the female side, and then I'm trying to find a male that is as close to the female selection as it could be. Now, another thing that, which I think is very important and that should be done, especially with the Southeast Asian varieties, the ones that flower longer. When you've selected a male, please, before you use it for pollination, do a round of like complete re-veg on that plant and see if there are any intersex traits that come out. Because if there's even a speck of chance that there is going to be some intersex traits in that male, or it's about to pass on certain deleterious genes like that, you'll be able to figure that out once you do a complete re-veg. And if it just re-veges and it doesn't produce female flowers, try to also produce female flowers on top of male flowers, then you understand, okay, this is a good male and you could probably use that. And then the other criterion has to come into picture, that you're looking for. And like you already mentioned, everybody has different goals when they're coming in to breed with a certain plant. So it really depends and boils down to what people are looking for. But for me, I'm doing most of my selection from the female side, and then I'm just trying to get a male that is really closely matched to the female. So I can stay around my female selection, and I can like work in a narrow range of varieties, as we're trying to get to a certain type of plant, or if you're trying to select certain characteristics into one plant. So I think it's really helpful for me that phase.
That's awesome. I wanted to do a quick intro to some of the other panelists that have joined us here. We have Cannabis Seeds. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, hello, sir. How are you doing?
Good, man. How you doing? I've been following you for a long time, man. I love it.
Yeah, me too. I keep looking at your page, and I was trying to figure out if this like someone who's from Thailand, or it's perhaps someone from a different country, who's living in Thailand. But anyways, it's amazing. I love your page and things you're doing with genetics out there, providing people easy access to good genetics, man. I think that's really amazing, because most of these people in Thailand, they have to buy from outside, and it's just a mess. So
I'd
yeah,
love to come over. I'd love to come visit you someday. It's just
okay.
so
Sure,
amazing. This is to see, man. I love it. Really.
Absolutely. You're most welcome, and you can come here. I'd be very happy to take you around and show you some fields, and show you some places of cannabis, and that would be amazing. I would love to do
That would be amazing. That would be like Christmas for me.
Yeah, it'd be Christmas for me as well. Anytime I can go to these places, it's pretty much Christmas.
You gotta come visit Thailand, man. We'll give you quite the tour.
Yeah, please. If you ever come to the kingdom, please hit us up.
Okay, I might have to come down now that I know you guys.
Oh, I love it.
We also have Wes Engine joining us. How's it going, Wes?
Wes.
Big up Potent Ponics, big up Cannabis Seeds, big up Infamous Prophets, Irrazinig. I hope everyone's living well. Big up the whole chat. Hope everyone's living their best life, man. Hope everyone's flowering something fucking funky right now. Yeah, I'm excited to get into it with the thing. I won't hold up anything here. How about you, Infamous? How you doing?
We're doing good, man. As always, I'm running around trying to do the best I can for these plants. I was ordering lights today. I've been dealing with getting these 50 new LEDs from China for one of our new rooms. So finally got that dealt with. We had a huge storm last night. So again, my outdoor got rattled again. Yeah, but besides that, really excited to hear more about this Afghani Middle Eastern landrace. I mean, this guy's a legend, as we all know, blowing it up on Instagram, showing us really what these cannabis plants come from that we all love. I think we all kind of enjoy that Afghani, landrace indica style from like that region of the world. So I'm excited to see what he's got to say and learn a lot I can from him. You know what I mean? Let's go. Let's do it.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to pop in at any time. We'd love to have you guys ask questions as well. We did have another question from chat while we've been talking. Do you have any standardized IPM, or what are the different pest management methods that people are utilizing in these types of situations where obviously most of the places where you're posting videos are very far from a local shop where they can buy hydro store. So what are they utilizing to help maintain the health of the plants here, especially when it comes to pests?
So, I think we need to understand when we're looking at places like Afghanistan and, or any place for that matter in India or Pakistan or even in Southeast Asia, traditional cultivation, most of these people are growing varieties which have been growing there for ages, if not hundreds of years. So what happens is that, a particular locale or a particular terroir, it shapes the population of a certain variety in a way that it can survive. And if it can't survive, then of course it'll go extinct from that place, or it will not be able to survive. So the plants we're seeing in the open out there, they're byproduct of nature selection more than human doing out there. I mean, humans have certainly played a great role in bringing it from the jungle and cultivating it systemically and fertilizing it and making it into something that is meaningful to us as a plant. And but at the same time, these plants, they absolutely do not use any kind of IPM, or they just do not bother about it. It's more like a regenerative style of farming, as I've seen some of the groups doing in California. What they usually do is they're not doing any IPM, and they actually let the nature take its cycle, because a few weaker plants will be attacked, and they will be get eaten by pests at the end, and that's just like the cycle of the nature. The pests have to survive as well. At the same time, the species would survive as well. So there is like a balance. But of course, when it comes to commercial growers who are doing commercial grows, they absolutely cannot afford to have a situation like this, where some of the plants are getting eaten by pests, and they get to have like some of their crop, because everything is pretty much numbered and calculated and accounted for. So in those circumstances, of course, people have to go with varieties. I think more than IPM, what people should go for is like varieties that can actually withstand the condition that you're able to provide to the plant, be it indoors, outdoors, wherever that is. I mean, you have to be aware of your surroundings. First of all, you have to do sort of like a biological survey, if you would, and understand what kind of pests are present in my area, and then really find varieties that are actually resistant to those pests. And if you can't, then there are absolutely ways, and there are so many products in the market that people can use. But I think what everyone should do is always start off right, and starting off right is using the varieties which are actually resistant and to the pests in your area, and can survive alongside those pests more than that. And from that point, if you also add IPM to the whole regime, I think it just like tops, and that's when people really get the best results. Instead of getting plants into your area which are not really suited for your region, or will be attacked by like a lot of pests in your area, and then also using IPM, I think a better situation or a better option is always starting off with plants which are resistant to those pests to begin with.
Well, that's great. I certainly thought there would be something there, but it sounds like it's all based on selection, which is really cool. It's certainly one of the bigger issues that one of the first things that I do when I'm doing consulting, if you have something that just hates your environment, trash it. There's too many other kinds of cannabis out there to sit there and get frustrated with one,
Yes. And I think at the same time, I also want to make sure, that you have to understand a good proportion of those crops that we're seeing are getting eaten by all kind of pests. Like, I think I'm going to go ahead and maybe make a poster and try to show a few buds which are being eaten by thrips, because which is like really common in Afghanistan and in places like Balochistan. And the way you get to see how thrips have attacked, so many of these plants is once it's almost the harvest time, and the population have died out, you can see their eggs, those white things all over the buds. So it's not like those plants are not getting eaten by pests. It's just they are growing in such massive numbers, and they don't really have like boss who they have to give numbers to, and so they don't really worry about that. They have like 100,000 plants. If 20,000 plants get eaten by pests, they can just go ahead and like harvest the remaining 80,000, and they'd still be doing pretty good. But we understand in commercial situation, someone who's growing, under a certain company or under a certain profit margin, they can't afford to lose like 20% of their crop, or anything close to that. So it's really different,
That's really interesting. What about in terms of harvesting? What is the harvest process? Well, I know a lot of people listening to the show aren't familiar with these, Afghan harvesting methods and things like that. But why don't you educate everybody on the drying, harvesting and drying and curing that they do, because they do a much longer process than I think most people do in the States.
Yeah. Again, I mean, their drying and curing process is also, I think, becomes a lot different. Is not a lot different, but it becomes actually, because If we're only simply gonna speak about, the places we're touring right now, like in Afghanistan, I think yes, it does become a lot different because it's dry out there. It's so extremely dry. I mean, the humidity is running around like 15, 18% humidity. You're talking about 20% humidity. So in those situations, it doesn't matter, where you're keeping your plants. They dry out like really, really fast in comparison to how people like to do it in the West. They like to take their crops through a very slow cure instead of like getting them dry abruptly, which they believe is like affects the flavors and a lot of other things as well. So in places like Afghanistan, where they're traditionally growing these crops, they don't seem to have that concerns. In fact, they don't concern themselves with those things, that how long is it taking for my crop to actually dry out? Because what they're trying to do most of the times out there, they're trying to dry those crops to a point where they really become just brown crust, and you could just like take it in your hand and make it powder with ease, because that's when it also becomes easy for them to separate the resin glands from the plant matter, because they're not really washing in order to extract the resin. What they're doing is they're sieving the material in order to separate the resin. So for them, it's actually a win-win situation, that is extremely dry, it dries out fast, and it dries out in a manner that they actually want it to, which is like really crusty, opposed to how people would want it in the West, where even if they want to make hash, I mean, I don't think they go for over drying the buds. So that's mainly one of the bigger differences, how things are being done in the traditional arena, say in Central Asia, and how it's being done in the new world of cannabis. But again, not a lot of similarities, but because the end product and how the end product is actually processed differs so much. So the process of drying is also very different, and harvesting is also pretty rough. It's done by hand. They don't really have access to machines, so they just go out there and harvest one field at a time. So if my field is, say, is getting harvested and you're my neighbor, I could say, okay, why don't you come over and help me, and all the other neighbors are gonna harvest my field today, and then tomorrow we could all come to your field and harvest yours. So it's all like manpower driven.
Well, that's awesome. We certainly have that same kind of community I've seen in a lot of places that grow. I know in Jamaica, when I went to the one town in Westmoreland, the whole village was one giant grow operation, and everyone got paid X amount of pounds per harvest, and then everything over that was split. Whatever they sold it for was split between everybody. So it's always cool to see that sense of community, and you don't really see that in the U.S. market. Certainly not in the cannabis market. It's knives out, and no one works together hardly at all. But you certainly don't have that problem here in Asia. There's a lot of great people here working together. In fact, a bunch of them are on the show. Infamous and me and Kanatai have all been working together out here so far, and I know Infamous and Kanatai have been working together for many years. So it's really cool to see those little communities pop up, and I think it's one of the best parts of cannabis is those communities it creates, and that building bridges with people that you wouldn't normally build with in your community.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very infectious vibe, this community thing. Even people, come from like certain other different parts of the world where, you have like a different culture. You don't really have a very community-driven culture. They tend to come in and they can immediately feel it, and I've seen a lot of people, come from outside and become part of these communities and actually go on to do amazing things for those countries. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing what people like Kanathai Seeds are also doing out there. So once again, shout out to him for doing the great thing, coming out there in Thailand, living there, and doing the thing.
So what about we had another person ask in chat, what are, if any, some examples of people fermenting the plant food before feeding? Do they do any kind of natural fertilizers at all, or are they strictly going based off of what's in the ground? Or Is there any methodologies or anything that is, maybe a little bit more universal or used in quite a few different places that you can talk to us about?
Yeah, so there are certain things which are like very, very common in a lot of these places, which is like plowing of the field. So what you would generally see is the season starts off with plowing the earth and really just flipping it, and getting the underside of the earth also see the sun, and that sort of like helps in uh, uh, getting the soil prepared, and getting some of the unwanted things out of the soil, because there are a lot of roots of grasses that otherwise wouldn't go away. Even if you just like cut them, they would just like pop back again. So that happens in a lot of places, be it in the subtropical highlands of India, that's like Uttarakhand, Himachal, Malana, these places, or even if you go to the polar opposite places like the cold desert of Afghanistan. So that is something which is happening all of these places. Now, after that, sowing of seeds is also pretty similar, is what I've seen. They just bring like a whole bunch of seeds and they start throwing them randomly in the field, instead of just putting one seed at a place, or really having a nursery kind of setup before taking out their plants into the open field. So that is not there. They just bring those seeds and they just throw them in the ground, and whichever is the whichever are hardy enough to grow, they grow. And these are really the things that shapes the overall population over time. And the weaker plants, the plants who need more care, are prone to diseases, pests. They tend to like recede in the population, and you get a population of plants that can actually survive really well in these places. So the way these people work, actually grow seeds, and it is just part of the whole larger process, that also helps in maintaining the overall population, with the help of nature, of course, because nature is the one that's selecting those populations in the traditional places. And as far as the fertilization is concerned, what I've seen is the cow dung manure is the choice of manure for most of the places. Again, some places I've seen they don't even bother to fertilize, but they have a different situation, because they're mulching most of the plants back into the ground before the snowfall comes in. So they do have fortifying their soil, but in a very different way. But if you go to Afghanistan, you go to Balochistan, you go to more commercial hubs in India like Malana, what you're going to find is that people are using cow dung manure. They're very specifically going out there, plowing the field, and then putting cow dung manure, and then again plowing the field a little bit to get it properly mixed in with the soil. So that's one of the choice of manure that I've seen. I've also seen horse manure in certain places, but that's mostly because of not having access to cow dung manure. I believe it's not really like a choice fertilizer for those farmers as well. So yeah, but they're not really fermenting, and they're not doing those things that you might be seeing in Thailand. A lot of probiotic farming. So that's really not one of the things which is being done, because again, these are traditional places and not exactly legal. So they just do things in a way, which is easiest, fastest, and is like safest. So their fertilization is just very, very simple, but tends to be effective.
So you currently have this, let me find the name of it here. The Afghan project going on this year, or currently.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, thank you very much for bringing it up. So every year, what we do is we go ahead and we do a few different projects. Like this year, we're actually doing 4 projects, but our main project is the Afghan project. And then we have a few other projects as well, like from Hopar Valley, Gilgit-Baltistan, which is close to Chitral Valley, and then we have touring being done in Tira Valley as well, which is in northern Pakistan, and then we have something coming from Balochistan as well that we do every year. from our friends. But the main dish is, of course, the Afghan project here. And what we're doing this year is we're trying to go to the places, one that we went to back in 2020, and were able to find some amazing plants which people were able to grow, and they also got some really interesting stuff out of. So we're trying to go out there and collect some more seeds from those areas, like Maruf Kandahar would be one good example. And then on top of that, we're trying to go to some different places that we've not been before, and trying to see if we can find something interesting, find something that we haven't encountered yet. However, in Afghanistan, what you see, the crop is like more or less the same. It doesn't really have a lot of difference like you would find in a country like India. I mean, it's more like Thailand. Like, you have different regions, and you certainly have different varieties in Thailand, but at the end of the day, they're not so different from each other. They're not like hugely different from each other. So and that's because by and large there is only one kind of climate. I mean, it's not like India. In India, you have Kashmir, where you have this dry climate, and the snow comes very fast, sort of like high latitude places. And then you have subtropical highlands like Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. We also have temperate region in between, like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh. And then if you go to south, you have a full-on tropics, because it goes right in the middle of the India. So we don't see that in places like Thailand or places like Afghanistan, because overall there's just one climate. I mean, not exactly, but by and large the climate is the same wherever you go. So that's also one of the things that's that's there.
Do you want to talk to
Man.
us a little bit about the hash making? Because you have a lot of amazing documentation on traditional hash making as well on your channel, or your
Yes, this year what we're trying to do is we're also trying to focus a little more on hash making and hash making process, actually, to cover it and to be able to show it in videos, in longer format videos, so that you can really get really close to the process. So as you can see already from these pictures that you're scrolling, that different areas have so different ways of extracting the hash. And what I've actually done is I've actually spoken to people, like I speak to my friend in Balochistan, and I ask him, I show him pictures of hand rub charas, and I ask him, what do you think about this? Would you do it in your area? And they're like, no, we'd never do something like this. We'd never rub our plants with our hands and try to extract the resin. We'd rather dry it and sieve it the way we're doing. And if we sometimes show videos or pictures of, say, Afghanistan or Balochistan to people in Malana, and they just can't really understand what's going on, and they would be like, oh, we'd just rather do this, this is what we've been doing. So not only that, these places have such different ways of extracting the resin, they most of the time also tend not to agree with how it is processed in a certain way. So starting off with like Afghanistan, you go there and it's just all dry sieving. I mean, that's just one method that is being employed throughout the country. You will not see another method being used in that country. So it's just that. And if we come to India, we can see a few different ways it's being extracted. And again, that could be attributed to the geography of our country, because it's placed in such a way that we have different climates which are so starkly different and not similar. So for example, we go to Kashmir, and you can once again see a lot of dry sieving happening there. People do hand rub over there as well, but they're also doing a lot of dry sieving, because the climate out there is more like a high latitude climate, and it gets dry. It doesn't really stay that wet during the winters. But if we come down to Malana, in the wetter places, they tend not to do extraction in that way. They just rub the plants, and then make those twisties or fingers or balls, and then just cure them slowly. And then as we go down to the south, we see it's not hash making isn't happening at all. They're just like working with buds. You have more like a Thailand like culture in southern India or even in eastern India for that matter. So yeah, I mean, a lot of places, they're all doing their hashes differently, and we just like pulled up this one beautiful picture here that I can look at of Kashmiri Challi. I mean, this is a special one. This is what they make once they've dry sieved the resin, and then they cook it, and they cook it inside a corn cob. I'm sorry, like the corn husk. So and it's like tied with the thread, so it kind of like melts inside, but it doesn't come out. And then they take it out and cool it down because it's done in the winter months, so it cools down really fast and it gets really hard. So then you could use it like hash. It becomes really convenient to use, opposed to the just the dry sieve resin they have procured. And this way they can also mix like a lot of plant matter as well, which will not be easily discernible. So it all gets mixed in, and they can just like sell a little more than they would have.
That's interesting. So how do they cook that? They just wrap it tightly in that and then put it on a dry skillet, or is it, how do they do that?
So yeah, it's actually a process. So what they start off with is, the first thing is, the plant matter has to be absolutely dry before they want to sieve it. So once they do that, they sieve the resin, and once they've collected the resin, they let the resin sit for a few days first of all. But there were some like younger folks that we saw in town. I mean, they weren't really doing that. They were just like extracting the resin and then straight away cooking it. But as we went to places like Pulwama, where we had more traditional farmers who've been doing it for a longer time in bigger scales, what they were doing was they were extracting. They were sieving the resin, and then they were keeping it. They were storing it for at least like 1 to 2 months. And once they were like, okay, it's aged a little bit, and it has developed certain flavor, then they would take it out. And at that point it wouldn't even also remain so powdery, so it's also easier for them to just like put it inside these empty corn husks which are dried out already in advance. And they would just roll them and tie them with threads, and then they make a fire, and then they put these pucks that they've made into fire, and let the fire burn. And this is where it's like really interesting, because somehow these people have very good idea like how long it has to stay inside the fire, because if it stays too long it can get ruined. And if it doesn't stay that long, you wouldn't have everything melted down, so it wouldn't really mix properly. So the people who do it, they just have this like intuition kind of thing. Okay, now it's done, so they would just take it out after a certain time, which is like not a very long time. After, I think I would say like less than a minute, but more than like 45 seconds, so around like 50 seconds. And then they would immediately beat it with something like a stick or a rock to just flatten it out so that it gets mixed properly. And they would put it back into the fire like 1 or 2 more times, depending on how it feels to them. And once second or third time around, when they're like sure, okay, this thing is like properly done, that's when they unwrap it, and then they check how it's done. They'll break it immediately to see the texture, whether or not it was properly mixed and amalgamated. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing when it's done right. The flavors are enhanced. The high, I I mean, enhancing the high is like not the right word. I mean, it just like goes 2 to 3x. It just increases so much. But the flavors come out beautifully as well. But that's when it's done right, because some younger folks doing it tend to keep it for longer, and they sometimes just burn off the flavors. And sometimes they just pull it out early. So it just has to be done right by experienced people. So when we tasted it from people in Pulwama, that was beautiful. That was, that's that picture from Pulwama from 2018. So that was, one of the best hashes that I've ever smoked. So yeah.
Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button there. That's amazing. I've never heard of that tech with the.
Me
with the
either.
board. That's really cool. I
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that with us. And certainly, I have a bunch of CBD dry stuff laying around. We're gonna definitely try that and try to film that tech because that's really, really cool. It's almost like a different version of like the Frenchy tech. Like if you didn't have a glass bottle and you didn't have oven bags, that's kind of, it sounds very similar to like what they do with the temple ball hash. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's more rudimentary, more wild, I mean, in nature.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really amazing. And is
I
there
almost
any
thought
other?
we're- Oh, sorry. I
I'm
almost
sorry,
thought
go
we were
ahead.
going Malawi cob with it for a second, but
Yeah,
then
that-
that's
Yeah.
that's pretty neat. I might try that sometime.
I spent hours looking at them photos. I can never get sick of going through his page. It's amazing. Especially that one that burgundy one they just kept like just recently.
Yeah. Those are, so we have like 3 of those from that same field. One of them is just absolutely beautiful. I think that was posted a few days ago, and then one that we just cut down like a couple of days ago, and then there's another one that's also a good one. So we're getting like 3 out of that same place.
It's
And
crazy.
all 3. Yeah.
I'm extra excited now about that canned Harmaru Fred now after hearing all this and seeing these photos.
For sure, bro.
Yeah.
Because I've only I've grown my share of cultivars in my time in California, and I've only had one of those plants like that was literally like an inverted color, so to speak, where all the genotypes, mainly like 99% of the ones that I saw were green leaf with real black buds or flowers, and then that one particular genotype I got was like that. It was like a burgundy red, cranberry red stalk and leaves, and then the flowers were green. It's like an inverse. Every once in a while you get that,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I've been searching for it ever since over here, and I haven't had any luck on getting that leaf color coming out of the F2s that I have, and that's all I have now. I don't have the F1 anymore.
These are just amazing. Is there any other hash methods that you can share with us? I mean, you seem to be very knowledgeable on these traditional hash making methods. Certainly one of our favorite topics. I had the pleasure.
I've just been like seeing these amazing people, so I mean, when you get to see all this, I mean, anybody would develop a certain amount of knowledge just like from seeing all of this stuff. But I think one of the most unique methods is the one, this Kashmiri ones that we've seen, because no other place, at least in the recorded history of cannabis, seems to be doing this. They're the only people who do this very specific thing, and Kashmir again is like such a small place when you look at it. So it's very interesting how this technique has somehow stayed within this very small place, and we just never see this technique being employed by any other place. And it's not like it's a bad thing to do. I mean, like I said, when it's done right, it's so amazing. I mean, the flavor goes up like a couple of folds, and the high goes up by many folds. So it's certainly something which can be done by even commercial producers. But somehow we've just not seen this technique anywhere else, not even in India, not even in the same country. So that's quite interesting. And dry sieving is really the method of choice when it comes to high latitude regions of Afghanistan and even in Pakistan, because it's really dry out there. And even the resin on those plants, the varieties you find in places like Afghanistan, they tend to have a very dry textured resin, which is just perfect for sieving, or even if you want to wash it. But they don't do that. That's like a very modern thing to do. So they dry sieve it, and it's just the kind of resin that grows on the plant is just perfect to do it. If you come to India, and not Kashmir, but to the more wetter places, you will see plant tend to have these gooey trichomes. The resin glands have a very sticky, gooey texture, which is right for them because it's going to get really rainy and going to get really wet. So it's great. If it's the texture is sticky, the water will not stand on it. It'll just like slip right away. So those plants have adapted just the right for themselves. And again, those plants are not working for us. They're really trying to survive and trying to survive their lineage. So when we come to India and that's the kind of resin glands you have, it's really not feasible that you do dry sieving on them. So I think rubbing down those plants in India, it just makes sense for them. So I think somehow these people, these communities, wherever they are in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, they've all found and figured out ways through trial and error. I think of through generations that what works for them, and they've just like stuck with those things instead of experimenting. And I think that's mostly because they don't have that many resources. So I think that's the best thing that they could have done. So yeah, that's why we see all these different methods at different places.
I'm certainly a huge fan of charas, having had the pleasure of getting my hands on some a couple of times. I think it tastes better than most of the others. But that aside from rosin's pretty good too. But
yeah.
So what are your favorite profiles or stuff that you've grown or gotten your hands on through the work that you've done? What's kind of your top 5 or top 3 that you've really just been really loving over the years?
I've tried many plants over the years because I've had the privilege to have access to all of these seeds first. So I can always dip into these seeds and pick out few and grow and see how they look like. Again, because I don't have like a huge space, so I have to be really picky and I have to make sense out of every grow. So what I have looked into mostly is the shorter flowering varieties, which are from Kashmir and Afghanistan and Pakistan. And I've also looked into longer flowering varieties. As a matter of fact, the only one variety of cannabis that I've bred so far, the biggest contribution in that variety is of the Burmese plant, because that's what we use for color. So I have, also worked with longer flowering varieties or medium longer flowering varieties, but not so much as I've worked with shorter flowering varieties from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and some from Kashmir. So my, top 5 would be, certainly one would be Neelam Valley. That's amazing because I found like one of the best females from that population, and I was able to really use that to create the variety that I did. And second best would be definitely Balochistan, because you have amazing plants, amazing yields, beautiful colors, flavors. So it's definitely on the list. And then apart from that, what I've really liked is the plants from Pakistan, but not from very high latitude, actually from mid latitudes around like 32 to 33 degree north, which is like Tira Valley and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and like Swabi. So those are some of the varieties I've worked with. Actually, Swabi is one of the varieties that actually got released in collaboration with Mass Medical Strains in the US and in Europe as well. And this variety is also being grown by Kiona. He's a producer in Washington, and if somebody wants to get a taste of that pure landrace variety, they actually can by visiting Kiona in Washington, and it's being sold there. So those are like some of the varieties that over the years that I've liked, like Kashmir and Balochistan, Swabi, and definitely Burmese in the longer flowering varieties is what I've liked. I grew Laos, Cambodia. I grew some Vietnamese stuff as well that I got from one of my friends in Thailand. And I grew Burmese, and this was happening at the same time. I was growing around like 2019. So what I really liked was like Burmese for me really stuck out. I mean, again, it could be different for different people, because growing seeds is more like Russian roulette. You don't know what you're going to get, and every seed is different. So a whole lot of possibilities out there, right? But this is what worked for me. These plants have worked for me. Balochistan, Hindu Kush, Tira Valley, Neelam Valley, Kashmir, and Burmese. And the Burmese stock I got was from Mongsat. It's it's a small place, and I might be pronouncing it wrong. I'm sorry if I am, but that's where that stock came from. In case someone is interested.
I had a question. Mass Medical, is that the guy there in Michigan?
Michigan, I think so. Yes.
Yeah, they're those guys. I've actually just swapped Thai heirlooms and a few other things with those guys. I have a buddy in California that runs their gear in California and gets it from Mass Medical in Michigan. I guess they got a giant facility where they pheno hunt. Like they have like a huge area where they have a lot of stuff they're going through, trying to pull special stuff out of. But he has a star pupil that I'm really interested in that strain. And he has an old timer haze, but also the star pupil, I believe, is like amazing.
Yeah, I haven't really grown that. So, I mean, I don't usually get to grow like a lot of hybrids. So, I'm not very familiar, and it kind of gets intimidating because you have to remember all these names, and then you have to follow the lineage, and
Right.
it gets really confusing at times. So, I have to write down notes. So, you gotta pick. As a human being, I tend to gravitate towards like more simpler things. Finding Landrace. Okay, the lineage is not so complex, and there's not so many folklore around it. So it's okay. We can use it, and we know for sure it came from this place, and we know the climate is like and all that. So really we
Right.
don't really get to work with a lot of hybrid stuff, but I want to. I mean, it's I'm not like really one of those people, like I'm trying to say like this is good or this is bad. I mean, Landrace is just what I'm comfortable with, but I think in future sometime when I get comfortable, I would like to get around hybrids as well. There are some great plants out there. I know some people have done amazing things in the last 50-60 years of breeding that has happened, and it's certainly worth checking out.
I believe that pure land race is where it's at. That's where all the it's the stepping stone, really. I mean, it's the pure stuff, the untouched natural is what I love. I mean, that's what I'm smoking on now. I believe it's just my Thai buddies bring these heirlooms to taste, and they're amazing. The smells, the fruits, and it's just amazing.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, we're usually smoking, Landrace stuff here. We're smoking. Usually, Cheras is the choice of smoke.
so lucky.
Yeah. And sometimes we do get flowers from southern India, which are also great, but they're at times very compacted. So they don't look as great, but they smoke so much better than they look.
Yeah, looks means nothing to me. I mean, I learned that 30 years ago.
What advice do you have for people that are growing landrace cultivars for the first time, or what are tips or tricks that you have for people that are just getting into growing, stuff that isn't hybrids? I think a lot of people maybe got started with bag seed or something else. Now, what if they want to try and grow some of the stuff? What advice do you have for people doing that?
Yes. Okay. So, if someone who's just like starting out thinking about, okay, I want to grow a landrace seed, I think a few things we have to understand and also consider before we can delve into growing land races. The first is what kind of space we have, because this is a spacey affair. Like growing landrace is not something that could be done in a very compacted space. I mean, it can be, given that you have the variety, but then again, the whole point of growing a landrace is to be able to grow it in a way that you can really see it express all the traits and do that you want to do. So one of the things that we want to make sure is that if we don't have a lot of space, then we're going with varieties which are shorter flowering, and because they're shorter flowering, they will also would not have a lot of stretch. So basically, the difference between the shorter flowering varieties in high latitudes and the longer flowering varieties in the tropics that we have is that these longer flowering varieties tend to have elongated period of pre-flower stretch. They just stretch for about like 8 to 9 weeks, and then after that, 8 to 9 or 10 weeks, they tend to just flower out like a normal plant. And that's exactly what is missing from those shorter flowering plants, because I mean they've been growing in places where you have shorter seasons, you have snow that comes in around like October or November. So their flowering times have been managed or adapted according to those timings. So those are the land races people would want to go with initially when they're starting out. The other thing people want to consider is that not really going crazy with free feeding the land races, because we have to understand they come from places where farmers are really not capable of feeding the plants on a daily or a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So what those plants really are getting from the earth is the minimal nutrition that is available, plus the cow dung manure that has been spread out and just to amend the soil. So there is absolutely no need to really feed them in a way that we feed certain hybrid varieties, because those varieties have now adapted after so many years of being grown that way. They have adapted to higher feedings and higher ECs. So that's something definitely we want to avoid with land races, because they most plant tend not to do good when they're over fertilized or fertilized even to a point where you fertilize a hybrid. So these are two of the main things. And one thing, if the people are going to go with the varieties which are longer flowering, like let's say a Thai variety, if you must do that, then you must start that plant under a 12-12 lightning schedule. You do not want to go from an 18-6 to a 12-12, because that can really create a situation where you're going to have a plant that could become like a tree, as you must have already seen in Thailand. So what you want to do in order to keep it compact, or to keep it around a manageable height or stature, would be to start off really from just 12-12 schedule or 10-14 or whatever people like. And it just kind of grows for a little while and then it goes into flowering. So people can also see the plant express pretty much all the traits, because most of these equatorial varieties tend to flower under that sort of schedule. So that way also people are able to see how these plants truly express themselves, and not having a very dry in an environment. Yeah, that's a tree right there. Okay, yeah, that's like a regular in Thailand.
No, that's a special one he found at the temple the other day. I'm sure he'll come back and tell us about it, but that's one that
Love to hear about it.
we'll be growing the seeds on here soon.
Well,
Yeah,
where I think your service is really valuable and people could use it is they could actually find seeds that are suited to their environment. So you could find seeds from the same latitude and same kind of climate region that you're in, and you could expect them to probably work fairly well for you and your environment.
Mhm.
That's the way I would try to use it personally.
Yeah, I think that's the idea behind publishing most of this information, that people before they're choosing, they can actually read what place this plant comes from and what kind of environment it grows in. So if you see that your conditions are almost opposite or not really like that, there are chances that plant might not do good. Like, for example, someone in Canada, British Columbia could be buying a Thai variety and then trying to grow it outdoors. So, it won't even, begin to bear the flowers, and it would be bogged down with the snow. So we have to be, we have to be considering these things. And I see a lot of times, people actually go on to get these seeds, and they're just growing this variety that you can already tell is not going to finish in their backyard. So I think, uh, and this falls back really on people who are trying to get these seeds, because from our end, we're trying to publish as much information as we can. So, we'd really appreciate if people could just read that, go through that, and really see, what suits them. And that ways everybody can have, good results. But then there are going to be breeders, who would want to get seeds, let's say from a very dry region, and try to run them in a cold wet region, or a warm wet region, and see if they can find a plant that actually survives there, because they also like a certain trait from. So it's not really like that's not like a set rule that you have to see what kind of environment you have only, and then get the landrace accordingly. But if you're up for experimenting, if you're like a breeder, intermediate, high level breeder, I guess, then of course you can do whatever you want. I mean, you can take 1,000 seeds of Ghani variety, grow them in very wet place, and see if you can find a plant that actually survives, and you have an amazing plant that flowers short but has qualities like a long flowering variety that can withstand wetter climates. So yeah, it really depends on how people are like looking at these seeds for what purpose.
That's really cool. We had another question from Chad is, have you gotten any Nepalese strains? I had some in the 90s that made the best hash. Tuning in late. Sorry if you've already talked about it. No, we haven't talked about that yet. And I'd love for you to talk about the more Himalayan side of things, because that's another aspect of Indian. I think the Himalayan stuff is also another good one if you are in a more northern latitude, because anything higher altitude is going to finish quick, because it has to, because when that snow hits, those plants are effed. So the higher altitude stuff is definitely another good option for people growing in northern latitudes.
Yeah, we do have a few Nepali varieties on stock. I think there's one from Panoti village, which is not very high latitude. It's around 1,500 meters, I think, and it's basically like the Tarai region. So the slope becomes a lot more obtuse around that part of the Himalayas, because you're like almost approaching the flatlands. So that's like one of the really good places to grow. Actually, that's one of the best soils you're going to find. But I mean, 90s. Also, I couldn't know like what hash in 90s was like, because I was like born in 1990. So yeah, I'm not like 160 or 70 years old. So yeah, I don't know what hash was like in 1990s, to be honest, man. So yeah, I can tell you what hash was like after like around when I started smoking around like 2003, 4. So I can definitely talk about that. But yeah, we have these Nepali varieties on stock, and they pretty much are like old school varieties. As they were. I think I don't really see any changes in them, because we have very similar regions in India as well, with very similar climate, and what we see is that an absolutely similar phenotypic expression in India as we would see in Nepal. And really the driving force has been the climate and the terroir, and in fact the soil, because there's just one region. I mean, if you look at like Nepal and Uttarakhand, and even some other regions like Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, they're like all bordered, and you more or less have like a similar climate and terroir, except for the Annapurna circuit of Nepal, which is really high altitude, and that just goes on a whole different level. So you have snow coming in a lot early in those areas, compared to the flatland or the Terai region, where it doesn't snow at all.
What are some of the other traits that you see in those mountain varieties?
Yeah, so these mountain, I mean, one of the things that you could do or someone could do is like come to a country like India, and you could start from flatlands, like a place like Punjab, and you can slowly move upwards into the mountains, and you could see how gradually that plant changes its expression in order to adapt to as the environment is changing as well with the altitude. So the main difference that we have been able to see between the varieties which are growing in flatlands and the ones that are being grown in the highlands of India is that of the vigor, and the flavors are more intense, the colors are more lucid, and they tend to have better vigor. But behind vigor and having better flavors, there's also is the farmer, the domestication work that has gone behind those varieties. So the flatlands of India basically become the urban centers. So you just couldn't you couldn't be planting cannabis here because there's law to some degree still. And then you go onto the mountain territories, which are, I'm not saying they're like completely lawless, but they are so vast and so spread out that you could be growing cannabis in any valley and be no problem. So there people were actually able to fertilize them, select for fiber, because fiber trait is something that we can certainly see in Himalayan varieties, that you can see back in the day these varieties were selected for fiber, and to this day we can see many villages are actually using these varieties for fiber as well alongside resin. So that's like one of the things that you're going to notice when you're going to look at these Himalayan varieties, especially the high latitude Himalayan varieties from Uttarakhand, Himachal, and Nepal region, the northwestern Himalayas, basically. So the other starkingly different trait that I've seen in these plants is that of the resin texture that we already spoke about. That they have a very sticky resin texture opposed to the dry resin texture that we find in the dry regions. And apart from that, the flavors they have, they tend to be on more sweeter and more like likable tangents, the tangents that are liked by the pollinators, such as the bees, because you have uh you know I mean, these are like tropics, so you have all kind of flowers, and bee populations are like just immense here compared to places which are dry, as in like Balochistan or Afghanistan, where you don't have the bee population. That, I mean, there are bees out there, but it's not one of the main pollinators. The pollinators are different. So what we also see in these Himalayan regions is that the aromas, the smells have developed in a very sweeter and fruity and floral tangents. These are like the main smells that the smells have gone on to develop into. And when we move to the other side, we go to the drier places, to the higher latitudes, where you don't have a lot of flowers growing around, you don't have a lot of shrubs growing around, you just have like desert and patches of weeds, and they're like far apart. So there are like two things we've noticed. So when these populations are so far apart, in order to attract the pollinators, they have to be smelling a lot harder than the plants which are actually growing in the vicinity of other shrubs. So, and we do see that in these Afghani varieties, the intensity of the smell is just so much better. I mean, so much intense, and the aromas, not in all population, but in most of the population, we are able to find aromas which are foul, like rotting fruit, and or like rotting eggs or meat, or even other kind of like foul smell like gas or diesel, which is like really common. Diesel, I would say, is like pretty common in those varieties. So and that's because they have this just different set of pollinators out there. So the Himalayan varieties, they're just so much different from these varieties that grow in drier and higher latitude regions. And one of the main differences is also that our Himalayan varieties here, they are like multi-purpose. So not only that, farmers are getting resin, like I said before, they're also getting fiber. They're also taking out seed, and these seeds are huge in size. From the ones which are the domesticated varieties that are coming from the mountainous regions. If you come down to the flatlands, the urban center, where you have feral varieties or wild varieties, they have very tiny seeds because they're not domesticated. So it's very natural for them to have like small, tiny seeds which are self-ejected. And then we move up to the mountains. We see the seeds are bigger, the plants are more robust, and the plant do not, self-eject the seeds as well. So farmers can actually go and collect plenty of those seeds and use them from next season, use them for nutrition, so many other different things. A lot of farmers in Malana also, use them for extracting oil, and they're using that oil for cooking, using it in soups. And yeah, I mean, that's just, that plant actually stands up to the definition of lifeline. When you go in the Himalayas, you can like really see why it's called the lifeline of the mountain regions.
That's so neat. I didn't realize that they came from more fiber producing lines. I didn't know that. It's definitely cool. And it's interesting to hear about the seed size. I know there's so much different variation in seed size in cannabis. It's quite interesting to hear about that differentiation between the highland stuff and the lowland stuff.
Mm. It's just, I mean, it also has a lot to do with, how things are. So all of the lowland areas or the flatland regions of India, I mean, they're like urban centers, there are cities, and there's so many people. So they're just so populated. You couldn't be doing cannabis. I mean, you could not be growing cannabis there. So whatever cannabis used to grow there, I mean, like years or ages ago, when it weren't like a urban center, they've gone feral because nobody's domesticating them anymore, or they just grow from wherever on the side of the road, or they'd be growing under a street light. And you could see even those varieties have adapted somehow, in order to grow properly in the urban areas, because there are lights everywhere, even during the nights. So we see a lot of these populations have developed a high rate of hermaphroditism, or auto flowering traits. So they tend not to follow the light cycle. They just like grow to a certain stage and then just start to flower, and also have like male and female, because you don't really have a jungle. So you could have a situation where someone can come and just like knock off the male, and you just have a female there. So what we're seeing in these urban areas also is that the cannabis is changing slowly, and what you see in these population is they're dominated by plants which have intersex traits and auto flowering traits. Kind of like they're surviving on their own, sort of thing.
Have you found any cultivars that I think a lot of people have claimed the Zamal Reunion Island stuff will do it, but have you found anything in the Indian stuff or anywhere else in Asia that will re-veg and produce flowers multiple times without having to be, totally chopped down? I know quite a few people are looking for that. I know Cannabis Seeds has found that trait in some of the freak show stuff. Have you found anything like that in any of the landrace there in the equatorial regions that you've been working with?
No, not really. I mean, because most of these equatorial regions in India, they grow in a very systemic way, as they would do in Thailand. I mean, everything is planted in rows and everything. So they pretty much just cut down, harvest everything. So they don't really like leave anything behind for any of that phenomenon to actually take place. So that could have happened in like highland regions, but then the snow comes in, and they have a entirely different story. So there's a good possibility that genotypes like this are lurking in those populations. But I mean, they would have to again broaden to XC2 settings, and then grown and reversed by someone who knows like what's going on and all that.
Sure. Is there any other really funky traits that you found, maybe not quite like that, but something else that's kind of been very unique to the different Asian genetics that you've worked with there?
Something, well, there are so many. I mean, there's just not like one that I could really point to, but I think like one of the beautiful things that I've seen, and it's something that really also shows how these plants have adapted according to the season length and all of these things. So if you go to the northwestern highlands of India, that is your Himachal, Uttarakhand, Nepal, it's like whole region of Himalayas, subtropical highlands. What you will see is when the seedlings emerge around, say, like March, April, they have really broad leaves, very similar to as you would see in the broadleaf varieties. The pretty much even it would be hard for anyone to even discern between them and any broadleaf variety. But as they tend to grow, what they do is like they tend to grow narrower and narrower leaf, and as they hit flowering, those leaves really get narrower. So what we've seen is like right around March, early March, when the seedlings are emerging from the ground in these areas, even though the spring has emerged, but the amount of light, the amount of insolation is really low. I mean, you're not getting like a full full sun, so you're getting only about, let's say, 9 or hardly 10 hours of sunlight. So in order to capture enough sunlight energy, these plants start out with really broad leaves, so they can they can like compensate in a way for the shorter insolation that is present during March and the early April. After the April, as the sunlight hours begin to increase and they go towards like a high, which is around like the 21st June, that's when you see that the leaves get like sort of narrower, because now the sunlight, the amount of insolation is getting more and more, so they tend not to need that broader leaflets to store more energy. And as we move again towards the flowering, we see those leaves get narrower because they just like to I mean, at that point, I mean, when the plant is just going into flowering, the plant is just really focusing into the flower, and most of the light energy is being actually used by the flowers and the bracts itself. So that's something really interesting to see, because we used to bring back these varieties from Himalayas and actually grow, and wonder why would they have such broad leaves but only to later go on and have an absolutely like a narrow leaf kind of expression. And then we really looked at the amount of insulation and how it moves from month to month, and then really becomes clear. I mean, it's very similar to as you would see people living in higher latitudes where the sunlight is really low, so they have very less melanin, and the skin is like really fair, so that they can absorb a lot of energy because the sun is not out there so much. They're on the higher latitudes, and as you move from higher latitudes towards the equator, you see the skin gets like slowly darker and darker, because right at the equator there's so much sun that you don't really need all that, so in order to block some of that, you have melanin. So in a very similar way, these plants have the broadness of the leaf actually is what's changing. But this is not something that's changing from region to region. This is changing within a life cycle of a plant. That the plant is actually starting out with really broad leaves because the insulation is less, and then it slowly moves towards an expression of narrow leaves, because the sunlight becomes more abundant in the environment, and it's just something really beautiful to see.
That's really interesting. I know there was a group I was working with in Oklahoma, and they had one that went from a super serrated leaf to a very normal looking leaf as it aged. It's also interesting to hear it going from wide to thin leaf, because I don't think I've heard of any cultivar doing that. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, at times, I mean, you'll see plants with very deep serrations, or where serrations are not per se defined in a way that they even cease to look like cannabis. So, I think we did find one plant this year. It was actually the opposite. It didn't have any serrations at all. So it looks sort of weird. We actually posted a video of that around, I think around June or July. I think around July, we go down in the feed. So that was pretty interesting. So of course there are like one odd plants out there. I mean, even in humans, I mean, if you just like look at like all the birds which are happening, there are like so many defects, and so much happening in those babies. So I mean, it's just pretty much same for the plants as well. When they're grown in like larger numbers and like bigger spaces, then we like tend to find things which we haven't really seen.
Trying to find your plant here. I'll find it. What are let's see, there was another question from chat. It says, have you found any strains that's, or I have found some Indian strains smell like sandalwood and pepper. The hash from it was extremely aromatic and very thick smoke. Have you found any genetics like that in your search?
Yeah, sandalwood is actually, like I said, one of the, I wouldn't say very common, but it's easily found smells. We've found this smell in northwestern Himalayas in Malana. We've found this smell and in some other eastern varieties in around like Andhra, and then we've found that smell also in variety like Pulwama, which is from Kashmir. And right now I'm working with actually one of the varieties which is from Kashmir, Pulwama, and we were like reproducing it. We reproduced it using a few different plants, like 7 females and 3 males. There were some green, some purple, some reds. And then in the F2, after we smoked out the F1 samples and everything, we were able to see that, okay, there's one green plant that had a sandalwood like smell. It had the best effects. I mean, it was pretty intense in comparison to all the other plants. So we took out seeds from that plant and then we reproduced again this year, and we're actually about to release that lot very soon, I think this month itself. And that contains the sandalwood smell, and it's actually beautiful because it's not just sandalwood. It's a floral sandalwood, like a incense, like when you have a mixed floral sandalwood like incense that you would burn, it gives off that kind of smell. So it's really beautiful, and when it dries, it maintains that smell, because at times what we see, these aromas tend to like change a lot as they're drying. Sometimes they completely change when they're dried out. So this particular plant also, when it was dried out, was okay, it had that smell, that sandalwood smell. So it's actually good. I'm like hoping to actually myself get into the after generation as well and see if we have been able to increase the frequency of occurrence for the plants that carry that smell, that particular smell of sandalwood incense. And if it comes out to be about like at least 30-40%, then I would like to invest more time and see if I can really just narrow down a population that is dominated by that sort of smell in the future, of course.
Is there anything that you're excited for aside from that the Afghan project that you're excited for in the next round or two of breeding? Any kind of sneak previews you want to give people?
I mean, that's really, where everything is going right now, our attention, our energy, everything. But we recently had a release for Double Dalai. That was my first hybrid that I've bred. And I wasn't really able to make so many seeds, so I believe not everybody who wanted to get them were able to get it. So I just wanted to let people know that our team is working on reproducing it again, and they will be available soon. So anybody listening in, if there's anyone out there who wanted to get that variety and was not able to get it, there's going to be more seeds made. We've saved the cut female. We also have tons of pollen from the same male. So we'll be able to create that after generation one more time, and then we'll be like looking further in more like creative directions with that plant. That purple plant, that completely purple buds, it was actually pretty freaky. Looks great.
I know I've certainly never seen one with that amount of vibrant color across the whole plant. I've certainly seen it in the, seen them get dark or things like that, but that is like a violet purple, and it's such a beautiful, beautiful plant.
Yeah. It was beautiful to look at. I must have brought like, I don't know, man, like 40-50 people to just to show them, because it was so beautiful. I would just like bring my friends from even different cities. I would like call them, come here, I'll show you something really cool. So yeah, it was really something to look at. So we're keeping it. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, there was a little delay there. I thought you'd stop. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna finish like that. So we kept the female, and hopefully we'll be seeing more seeds coming in the future.
That's wonderful. Has there been any harder since the change in government there in Afghanistan to keep working with these farmers, or has that been pretty much unchanged?
No, it has changed a lot actually. If you talk about like northern Afghanistan, it's almost impossible to cultivate anything, and that's one of the reasons why you would see. I mean, people like Baba. You already know like Baba from Afghanistan, right? Uh, so you wouldn't see him like post a lot of plants this year because he lives in north, and yeah, man, like not even smoking is really hard now. I mean, let alone growing it. But if you come towards like northeast, where Taliban doesn't have a stranglehold, and even in south, because south is like so vast, so people can just go towards like the border region, around like Balochistan and Afghanistan border. They can go and they can plant there. So they've been able to plant still, but the cultivation has gone down by at least 10 folds. And as a result, in the neighboring countries which enjoy Afghan hashish, prices have gone up for Afghan hashish very, very, very steeply for them as well, because the cultivation has plummeted. And but they're still growing, and if they get found out growing, of course, they'll have to deal with the consequences, and not to mention that they get dire over there. So really, I mean, hats off to those people. They're still choosing to do this. I know they make money out of this, but still, I mean, there are 1,000 other ways of making money, and they still choose to do this. So hats off to those people. They're still trying to keep it alive. But yes, things have changed a lot since then, and I would say if you really want to get a beat on how things are in Afghanistan right now, like in terms of like Taliban rule post, you should like probably think of getting Baba on your show and like speak with him, and yeah, he'll be able to really give you a rundown of what's going down in terms of laws and law and order, all that stuff.
That'd be awesome. I'll have to get his info from you. That'd be great.
Yeah, of course. I'll you can like get him, and I'll look you up. I will get you to talk to him, and then you can ask him to come over. Not sure if he can, how much English he can speak, but he can certainly speak enough.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Express himself. Yes.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah. No, that's awesome. What is there any other things that you usually recommend to people as far as Indian specific cultivars, or things that they should look out for, or you find particularly interesting or tasty or unique from the specific to India?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the high is one of the things that I think is like one of the main things in all of this process, the effects of a certain cultivar or a certain variety. So the creeper high that comes from the Kashmiri variety, I think I absolutely love that, and I like to speak about it a lot to even other people who are trying to get these seeds from like Kashmiri varieties. And the good thing about this sort of effect is not something that you have to hunt. I mean, it's just there in Kashmiri varieties. No matter what Kashmiri variety you pick, there's a signature creeper high that starts very slowly from your back, from your backbone, and slowly, builds up in the head, and then it just like peaks. So you really have a very euphoric, sort of like period, that you could say the peak of the high is, and then it slowly comes down as well. And after it's like completely worn off, it doesn't leave your head like where you were hungover or something. So it's really smooth, and it's something everyone must experience. I mean, even in US and Europe, there are a lot of Kashmiri varieties present, so you can like pretty much get your hands on any of those, and then you could try to smoke and actually experience it. I actually shared some seeds with someone in US, and he was able to grow a big crop of northern Kashmiri variety, and then he extracted the resin, and he pressed it down into the oil, and he smoked that. And when he came back to tell me about how the effect were, he basically ended up writing almost like a poem, to describe how the effects were. They were like so poetic, so beautiful.
That's really awesome. I certainly want to try and get my hands on some of those. Do any other panelists have any other questions for our guest? I'm sure you guys have a couple that you guys have been waiting to ask.
Well, you kind of touched on it. I was going to ask if he ever got into any sticky spots that he was able to tell us about on his adventures out with, I don't know, bad, dirty cops or angry locals, or
Oh yeah, lots of times, man. Like
what's the
keeps
standard for getting out of a situation like that?
So I mean, there's not like a field guide for it, for sure. For me, I'm mostly able to speak and communicate with people because I can speak a few different regional languages from around here. I can also speak Urdu, so I can get around a lot of these places actually. And I think the main thing is the communication. Most of the times, people come from different countries and they get into these sticky places somewhere. The main problem is they're not really able to communicate at times, and even the people who are in the force, they're not, really up to date with English or like the other foreign languages. So yeah, and you know, rest, you can always pay and get out of a situation. That's like a standard, I would say. At least in Asia. I mean, I'm not sure about the rest of the world.
It works in the Caribbean too, as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
About Cannatai or Infamous, did you guys have any questions?
I was curious, was there any other type of hash techniques that they use? Do they ever like do BHO or do any press or anything like that? Or is it strictly just the traditional methods of producing the hash?
Ice extract, maybe.
Okay, so I mean, up until this point, people have been strictly just sticking to what they've been doing traditionally. But I mean, just recently, I had a friend in Milana. So because there are a lot of foreigners and a lot of people from other cities are visiting that place, so they keep telling these farmers about, oh, have you seen this, and have you seen that, and they would show them pictures of BHO. So someone must have shown them this picture of BHO, and somehow they explained them, okay, this is how to do it, and they were able to get like canisters of butane as well. And we found out about it, and we were able to see, okay, this is like, you guys should not be doing it. I mean, because you absolutely are not going to be able to purge out any of that butane from that stuff, and then you just be like giving it to people. So what we thought, because in traditional places, you don't really have, how should I say this, we don't have kind of a position that we can take something away from them. If they're doing it, they're gonna, it's really up to them if they want to like stop doing it or not. But what we could do was present them with an alternative which is much cheaper, efficient, and get them the same result. So what I did was I went back and I got one of my friends who does metal works. I got him to create a press, a makeshift rosin press that actually works, and we sent it out there to the guy it was just one guy who had started making BHO, but it was only a matter of time that it was going to like spread out to other people. So we got him the press, and now he's not gonna be doing BHO. Instead, he's gonna be like pressing his hash, and he's gonna be taking out rosin, hash rosin, call it oil, and it's gonna fetch him the same result, and he doesn't have to pay for the butane. And and we also told him that he's probably like taking a big risk doing this. He could like probably blow up the place if he's doing it inside like a small room, which is where they're doing it most of the time. So that is taken care of. But yes, we now, you could say, I mean, at least one family in Milana now has a rosin press, but they're still rubbing the plants because their plants are seeded, so they can't take the buds, and they can't be pressing buds, so they have to still make the hash, but then they take some of their hash, turn it into oil, and then it like sells for a lot more than the hash because it looks like oil. So things are changing, things will change. It's really not up to us, but as like I said, sometimes we see something happening which is really not good, and we don't have the power to stop it, but we provide an alternative and see if they latch onto it.
And there's so much good chars done the old school techniques that I wouldn't even really want to attempt any other ways when you got all those flavors,
Mhm.
That's what I think. I just think I already see it, man. That stuff's just
Can
A
you
grade all the way.
can you tell us about this one? Because this looks similar to Australian bastard cannabis.
Yeah, so this is from Srinagar, Kashmir, and this is a trait that is not very common, I'd say, but we were like seeing plants like this time and again. So I mean, to the degree that the leaves are like that on this particular plant is also because it was like flowering. Those leaves are like really around the flower, so they tend to be like a little
Wow.
thicker,
Check
like
that
bracteates.
out.
But still, this plant is a lot different from a normal looking plant in Kashmir. This is from this one, a special one we got from Dachigam National Park from
Yeah,
about
so
like
how many is there? How many do you get of these? Do you get a
we,
few
we
or?
so you get them in patches in Kashmir. You don't have like large cultivation in Srinagar because of how things are out there. So what you see
Right.
is you have to go in the wild or a little bit away from the population, and you will see patches of like 10 here, 20 there, and they're mostly eaten or grazed by goats. So you'd find them in like very small, like clustered up shrubs, like plant. But yeah, mostly this plant. We had a bunch of plants that actually look like this. I actually have posted pictures which had leaves even funnier, even funnier leaves if you
Now,
scroll around.
do those get pollinated and maybe people keep the seeds and tag them as mutant or over there?
Yeah, so no, I mean they're not like really local people are not really after, I mean, such traits. They're just like making hash. So when we were out there, we were able to take out seeds, and we germinated. Um, I didn't found exactly like a plant like that, but I found a plant that's like somewhat closer. So I'm like trying to work with it. I'm also like reproduce it and trying to see maybe in a larger population I may be able to see that expression again. And at the same time, trying to outcross it to Swabi and see maybe if that brings out that trait in the hybrid progeny. But I'd be more interested to actually looking into the F2 and seeing if I can actually find that particular characteristic in the larger population.
Right. That's cool. I kind of have a little. I like mutant genetics too. I love the plant in general, so that doesn't matter. I like it all. So, but the mutants are cool. They're new to me, so I kind of have fun with them.
Yeah, that's the one we like plugged it out of the ground.
I like it.
It's definitely different. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, not the same. Yeah, it's definitely something different.
Hey, you should make a new brand, Thailand Mutant Ninja Cannabis. Yeah, Ninja Cannabis.
And some of these are really, really, really different. That's cool.
Yeah, those are amazing colors, and just the morphology of the leaves are just wow.
Yeah, it looks a lot. Some of those leaves remind me of the ABC Freak Show because of the single blade. Some of them have that triple, three blade, and single and triple, and yeah, I get stuff like this, but not like that, but kind of like that.
And those leaves are like really small if you look at them also.
Yeah, they
And
look
that's
like
from
they're mutant, but they look like they're oily and they smell like.
So this is like the temperate region. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So this is the plant. This is the expression you find in the flatlands, temperate region. You know, the feral plant that I was talking about with the smaller seeds. So
Yeah.
the earlier. So that's that expression. That's that feral. And this same plant becomes a lot more robust and more productive as you
Uh-huh.
move towards the mountains because of the domestication, and the weather is also more conducive. These plants tend to like cooler weather, so
Oh, look
they
at
do a
those.
lot better.
Those pistils. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
those pistils.
this is from Indo-Tibetan border. This is just like right at the Indian-Tibetan border. I mean, this was just amazing. Some of these plants from this place,
Look
they
at
didn't
that.
even look like cannabis plant. You could just walk
Yeah,
right past them and not know they're like cannabis plant. There's a
that
couple
is
more, I think.
it's amazing. It reminds me of like Freak Show family ish. You know, I'm not gonna say that, but like that kind of.
Those are amazing, dude.
Yeah, they are. That one with the pistols is crazy. It's like a grin spoon knot, but crazy.
Pulwama.
We ran into a green spoon expression. It's in the video that I posted yesterday or this morning, I guess, you guys' time.
Yeah, that's long. Yeah, they're really cool. I think it's cool.
Do you know much about the different grading of the different hashes there in that region? Can you explain that? Because I know
Yeah,
there's different
yeah,
grades.
yeah. So that's actually like a really important thing out there. I mean, because like I
Mhm.
said, they not so much about the plant as they're about the hash. So I mean, like starting from the bottom, I mean, you have jungla, and jungla is basically is they're rubbing plants which are not fully domesticated, and also the rubbing is being done in a way that's really harsh, and is being done from a point of view that they have to accumulate as much as they can. So they're really keen on getting a lot of plant matter along with the resin on their palm so they can like produce more. So they're not thinking quality, they're thinking quantity. So that is basically your jungla, and then you move up a tier is you have a medium business quality is what we call it in India. And a medium piece is it does have some plant matter, but it has a lot more resin content along with it. I mean, certainly more than the jungla. And that hash is also not rubbed from like wild plants. It's rubbed from fully domesticated and fully ripened plants. It's just that the rub would be done by a lady or by like a kid in the village, so it's not going to be that proficient, it's not going to be that clean per se. And after that you have cream. After those two tiers, the third tier is when you like uh, start to see the cream. And cream is basically when you begin to see at least 60% like resin to plant matter ratio, and it'll be really sticky, it'll be gooey, it'll stretch, and it's going to have a beautiful smell. And yeah, you could just tell by looking at it, this is good stuff, it's shiny and all that. And after cream you have super cream, and super cream is a matter of art. I mean, only very few people in the village know how to do it. In every family there's only like one person who can do it, and males do it, females do not make super cream. So they would just go out and first of all pick out the plants that they want to use for that particular session, and all of those plants have to be absolutely ripen and pristine. The second thing is they have to pick the day that it has to be a shiny day, it can't be casted day. So that a shiny sunlit day is when they get the best results with with hand rubbing. Then they would also have like a person with them who would be simultaneously like preparing those buds by taking out all the leaves. So the guy who's rubbing it is not also doing that, so that his hands are not touching any impurities, not getting like any other impurities or plant matter onto his hands. It's not accumulating anything else except for the resin. And the last but not the least thing is that they work in very small sessions, as in they would only accumulate about like 1 or 2 grams at the most, and then they will just take it off. Because that is the point after which you begin to accumulate more plant matter, because you have like a film of sort of like oil on your palms. So that's when they just stop and they just take it out, and it's a very slow tedious process. a whole day's working only gets you about like, say 10 grams if you're lucky. But it sells for a lot, and you could say just it's almost oil. If you press it down, if you press down, say like 10%, 10 grams of that, you should be easily able to get like 8 grams of oil, if not more. So that's basically what the grading is. They also make oil, but it's not good because they're basically boiling down plants. And some people are also doing alcohol extraction, but those things are basically sold to people who want it for medicinal purposes. Recreational people, stick to hash.
Nice. Yeah, no, it's so what it the is so it takes 3 years to make the cream, is what you're saying?
I'm sorry.
You said it takes 3 years for that cream to form in the hash in the aging process?
No, no, not 3 years. No. It's just like made in like small sessions. The super cream, like uh let's say if you're just making cream or you're making a medium quality charas, then you can make say 30 to 40 grams in a day. But if you're making super cream, then you can only make about 8 grams in a day, because the process itself is so slow of rubbing, and they have to be very careful they're not getting any plant matter or stuck on their palms along with the oil. And as soon as they're about like 1 gram, 1.5 gram on their palms, they will just like take it off. So because the process is slow, a whole day's working, you can only make so much. You can only make 7 or 8 grams. And then other type of hash, which is like more rugged, is not that carefully taken out of plants by women and children and other family members. They end up making like 30, 40, 50 grams in a day, because they're just like rubbing it really fast. Hard.
Interesting. It's also fun to hear it's a whole family affair there. Definitely something that you can't do in a lot of places in the US.
Yes, you could see really small kids doing it. You could see, all the women doing it. So, one can argue about the fact that kids shouldn't be doing it, because sometimes it's like really small kids who don't even know what they're doing. But at the same time, that's their legacy. That's what their forefathers have done. Their father is doing, and probably they'd be doing. So sometimes it makes sense, but again, that's something that's really up to them. How they want to do it.
Oh no, every culture is different and has their own different things, and I think as long as people aren't abusing anything, it's all good. Any other things that you'd like to tell us when it comes to working with these different Asian land races compared to other, maybe land races out there that you've maybe had a chance to work with here and there? Any reason why people should kind of look towards the Asian stuff over some of the other options that are out there?
Yeah, a lot of reasons actually. Like I even mentioned earlier, I spoke about a couple of traits in specific that those things could be incorporated, into the existing gene pools, and they can bring so much good for the plants. For example, I keep hearing about like PM problem in places in US, and a lot of mold issues as well. Like people have to cut down early, so they could certainly they should certainly be looking into directions such as mixing some Southeast Asian varieties from places like Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, these places, getting those genetics incorporated into their gene pool, and see if they can find plants which are every bit like their selections were, but just also with but just also being impervious to wet conditions. So I think it's such an important thing. It's such an important trait, and it's not just like a very small thing. It's difference between having a proper harvest and not having one. I keep seeing every year that around September, late September, people start making memes on people have to harvest early. Oh, it's gonna rain, so I just harvested early. At least it won't be moldy. So I think there are better ways to deal with those situations, especially, we are human beings and we've bred all kind of plants. So this is really not a big deal. And people, if they start taking, Southeast Asian varieties seriously in terms of breeding, I think they can really turn around, the existing gene pool in terms of being resistant to issues which arise from wet conditions like mold, mildew, and all that stuff. So people should really be looking into that.
Amen.
I think people often get overly worried about herms too. I mean, you always have that small amount in every population, but I haven't really seen it happen more here so far than I have in any other type of landrace situation, like the stuff I saw in Jamaica and Africa wasn't herming any more or less than the stuff I've seen here. So I think it kind of gets a artificially bad rap when it comes to that, and it's not really deserved, at least what I've seen.
Me too. Tell you the truth,
Yeah.
I've seen more. I've seen more herm problems with online seed bank autos, and I'm not gonna say no things, but there's posts, many posts. Posts have people stack up on comments talking about a lot of herm, and I hear it, and I have seen in 6 years of out here hunting around in the villages, I've seen a couple herms, but it's not like nothing as bad as I see online with other stuff. So, see a lot of good stuff actually out here.
Yeah, these Southeast Asian varieties, I've seen like people kind of have this, how I would call it like a post hoc explanation, sort of like that, high stuff hums more, or like this tropical stuff hums more. I I personally don't believe that, but one thing is that could be said positively about it is that because it flowers for a longer duration, so it has a larger probability of producing hermaphrodite flower. So purely by possibility, because the hermaphroditism or the intersex trait can only pop up during the flowering time. So if a certain plant has a larger flowering duration, so it would have a larger probability of having it. But I don't think that is what people should be looking at when they're breeding. What they should be looking at it is what is the frequency of occurrence, and like when you actually cross it out, actually does it actually carry forward on along with other traits that you want, or could it be isolated from those traits that you're actually looking to introgress from these varieties onto your existing gene pool. So those are the things that people should be more concerned about. Rest, we talk about hermaphrodites, they're everywhere. They're in Kani varieties, Indian varieties, Pakistani, Thai, Cambodian, Laos. I mean, there is no escape from it. It's part of the natural population, and it's going to be there, but it's a marginal. We can all, the reason that we only see very, very few of these is because it's a deleterious trait, and nature has a way of keeping it at margin, at bay. So yeah, it's not that big of a problem as long as people are breeding in proper ways and doing assessment of their genetics, and I don't think it becomes that big of a problem.
I think landrace are a great building block, like you said, to input and make hybrids, to pull what you had in mind in the beginning of doing it, and then pulling out and actually seeing some of the stuff really close to what you thought you'd see. It's a great feeling, because I've had luck over here, whatever you want to call it, knock on wood, but I've seen some really amazing stuff from the West Coast, California input into these heirlooms, and the F1s that come out are just really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that people might be pleasantly surprised with when they breed with Southeast Asian varieties is that the vigor that's going to come out. When I started breeding this, okay, I've only like bred one variety so far. So when I just started breeding it out, the first thing that I did to start off was cross a Hindu Kush male to a Burmese female. And the progeny that came out of it had vigor, for like ages. I mean that is the vigor that people should be targeting. So I was so happy to see that, and it stayed, even when we like reproduced it further into like F2 and then outcrossed it. We were able to like keep it and maintain it, in a good proportion within those populations. So it's just amazing, how the overall vigor is improved so much. So people should like experiment a lot. And I think the biggest fear people have is that these Southeast Asian varieties, they don't have that intense flavors, or like you can't just like dry them and smoke them. They won't give you flavor. You have to cure them for a very long time. So they just don't want those kind of traits to creep into their commercially viable crops. And it's very understandable, but I think that's where the selection process, and that's where the breeder comes into the picture. So if even that much is not being done, then then you pretty much that's gonna be a problem with everyone.
Right. Yep.
This one was grown by someone in United States, I think, and I think around like Rocky Mountain somewhere.
Wow.
Back in 2019, 18, I think, 19.
The size of those flowers, holy crap.
Right. And look at the leaf, man. There's barely any. There's no serration really.
Some beautiful plants, man.
Yes, 100.
Was there anything else you wanted to share with our listeners? And before we start to wrap up the show, it's been a really wonderful episode. Always fun to see the triple plus.
Yeah. No, I think we've pretty much touched, I think, a little on everything. If there's anything else, I mean, you'd like to ask or discuss? Sure.
I want to somehow run. I would love to get beans from over there someday. That's like.
It's like a 3-hour flight. You can you can come here. It takes around like 3 hours, and you'll be here.
Yeah, no, definitely gonna, once we get the farm fully up and running, I definitely gotta come see you, because you're not that far. So
yes, please do. And I'll keep some good stuff here for that time.
We'll bring you some goodies too. How do people find you and your amazing work and all the other stuff that you do?
On Instagram, I mean, that's where everything is. And as far as seeds are concerned, there's some seed banks listed, I think, on the bio as well. I'm not sure like who has what, because I'm not personally managing any of the seeds, so it is done by other guys at Full Power Selections, and they're like friends, a couple of people who actually started out Indian Landrace Exchange with me, and they pretty much like manage all the seeds and seed banks. So I'm pretty aware of a lot of things here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know you had to get up a little bit early to join us. I know it was, I think, 7 o'clock when we started the show this morning for you. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show today.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting being here, and thank you everyone. I mean, but I really loved it, and I hope you guys really liked the conversation as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, that hash making technique was golden. I think we're gonna definitely cut that out and make a short little clip out of that, because that was wholly new to me, and I've been through Africa and a bunch of other places, and I've never heard of that one. But that was certainly cool, and I very much thank you for sharing that and all the other wonderful knowledge that you shared today.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I'll make sure I have some of that baked hash when you come here. We'll make sure you could try some of that, so you can come full circle.
Oh, that'd be great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Bye.
That was amazing. Certainly one of the people that I follow and have been following for a long time on Instagram. Someone that I see posting more interesting videos of cool Landrace stuff than anybody else out there.
Yeah, the walkthroughs, the fields, the walkthroughs with the rainstorms, the wind, and the cracking ground. I just can't. And then they're just medicine balls, you know, they're beautiful.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing actually. And then all
Also,
that,
yes,
all
yeah.
that, all that chocolate chunks. I mean, my goodness. Amazing.
We also had I had a video. I got a chance to visit another farm up in Buriram, or not in Buriram, in Pechabun up in the mountains. And they're growing a whole bunch of different, mostly mango Thai stuff. So this was the first farm that I've been to where there was only a small percentage of the plants were limonene dominant. They were very much the extreme minority. All of these are much more mango Thai, or like a guava mango. So
Look, the tent, like Buddha tent. See?
yeah, so this was really cool, and you can check out the full video on my YouTube channel, Ponics. I got the audio off at the moment, obviously, but you can see here. I mean, they're just massive plants. Obviously, they need maybe a little training on some scrogging and a couple other things, but they're learning.
Bamboo sticks here and there, little cages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing that I noticed that they do here is they blast everything with a ton of trichoderma. And I think it's I think that might be part of why some of these aren't getting super, super terpy, is that they're wiping out all the mycorrhizae with the trichoderma. The trichoderma is dominating the soil, and it's great if you're just trying to get rid of mold, like for sure. But, the consequences is that you're getting not a whole lot of terpene expression. So I think that might also, because everywhere I've gone where they had any kind of mold problems, you can see the trichoderma growing on the bamboo. I mean, you can clearly tell they're spraying it quite regularly. So that was another interesting observation I saw at this particular place. Just get through here a little bit, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of show you guys, what Thai stuff is, and these are all month 3 of flower. So, not fast finishers, but certainly heavy yielders. I'm not quite sure if you could pull this off in anywhere except for maybe SoCal or maybe Texas or Florida, or somewhere else deep in the southern part of the US. But probably kick ass in Puerto Rico though.
Yeah, Caribbean, sure.
Yeah, man, those would do all right in the Caribbean, I bet.
Yep. Dude,
For sure.
yeah.
But you don't get a chance to walk into a grow like that too often. It's that stacked. Thought that was pretty cool. But again, this was the first grow I've been to where they were very clearly Thai stuff, but not just blindly limonene everything. That seems to be the main issue. But where's oh, here it is. This is the one I wanted to show you. So this is that green spoon plant. Check it out. So it's got these crazy foxtails.
Oh, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that shit, dude. No way. Nice.
But it's only on half the plant. The other half of the plant isn't really doing it.
Oh, it's a lat. It is. It's a lat.
See? It's on both of them. It's like only on part of the plant, but not the rest of the plant. You can see this side is much less dense with leaves. I don't know if it's a light issue or what's going on there, but it's definitely different. But just very, very strange.
Old green spoon. Look though, there's one's twigs coming off there. That's it.
Yeah. Those
Man,
of you
I
that
used to
don't
always see that in the back of High Times. I'm like, who the hell would buy that?
yeah,
Right.
so green spoon takes like 6 months to finish. So that's the other.
And there's like
This
one,
plant- this
it's like
plant's massive.
stick to trichome ratio is like even.
Yep.
to callets. Stick to callets ratio is about even.
That's the grower. Runs the place.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. It's been fun checking out a bunch of different Thai grows, trying to talk to as many Thai people. Actually, I have a meeting with a cool guy, old school guy has been growing for, many, many decades up when we go up to Chiang Mai. and a couple other people that were got invited to go see their farms. So we might have to get together and do a little tour together with the crew here, and that'd be fun. But there's definitely a bunch of people we're going to be visiting when we go up to Chiang Mai here in the beginning of December.
It's
For
the
sure.
old school, the people that have been growing for a while. I'm always on that hunt for new smells, man, and structures that are not hybrids. I want something that's, well, you know what I'm saying, something that's an heirloom, land raised, that someone's legitimately knows is, you know, something they kept because it was special. You know, I love finding that stuff. And it doesn't even matter. Sometimes you even go into like the WAP. You never know what you're gonna come up across. I mean, you know.
Yeah, well, give everybody a quick rundown on the one that you showed us earlier, because I don't think you talked about it on this show. I'm super excited to crack some of those beans. But tell everybody about the plant.
I got about
cool little story.
I got about 800 seeds, bro. That's what I got off that out of the. Well, no, I take that back. I got about 150 of the ones in the envelope that he handed me when I was out front with that big plant. And then off the back one, that one was folded in half. It broke, but it was taller than the other two. They were like 18 feet. The other one in front was the big one. The one I took at home here. That was the big one. But the other one in back that was still alive, I mean, it was over 20 feet too. I mean, and I got like I got a ton of beans off that, and they were all you couldn't tell the difference because I took the ones out of the envelope, and some of the ones I extracted myself and put aside. I couldn't tell the difference. I think that he got them off the plant in the back. That's what my feeling. I kept them separated, but still though, to me, we'll have to see if you can run. You know, the same. It's like the same to me.
It's certainly really cool to see.
They're massive, dude. They're massive beans. You don't see that in Asian strains for the Landrace.
Can you show that bean compared to a normal bean?
Yeah, hell yeah.
I'll spotlight you here, because these things are huge.
They're like I'll get a seed. I'll get something from like back home, like a normal, legit, just a normal, legit. Good. Here we go, right here. This is the normal size seed, and then
Are these like peppercorns or like what? What are they comparable to here?
Yeah, some of them, you know, they're all big, but some of them, like, you kind of gotta go through them. You pour them out, you can see them better. Let's see what I got here. Man, let me get something I pour them out.
Thanks everybody for watching. Hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Tell your friends about the show and check out our other show, Dat Smoke Show, on the Dat Smoke Show channel. It's also available on iTunes and SoundCloud now. You can listen to both of the shows in audio format as well if you don't like looking at our ugly mugs. Other thing I was going to mention, you can check out the Aquaponic Congress. They have videos. My presentation from the Aquaponics Congress on cannabis production is on there, so you can check that out. We covered a lot of cool stuff in that presentation. And then I'll also be speaking the weekend after the Aquaponic Cannabis Conference, which is the 14th and 15th of January. I'll also be speaking at Our Future, which is Matt Powers' conference with John Kemp, Chris Trump, and forget who the other speakers are. Matt Powers is organizing that. Really appreciate him inviting me onto that. Definitely check that out. It's r-future.com.
All right, let's see if I can get some good. I should flip my screen for sure. Now these here are these are a pheno of the freaky bastard that was it had more of a normal leaf structure, and I knocked it with S1 Terricola auto pollen because I had just playing around. So that's what these are. But there's fat. I look for something that had they're fat. But look at that tie right here. These are those tie seeds. I mean, you can see the difference.
Those are big.
And these are not small seeds. There's pieces of rice there.
Oh yeah, those are big as well.
So I'm
Those
trying to
are
get to
huge
it.
and round. Those
Yeah,
Thai
but you
ones.
see what I'm saying? They're bald. They're like perfectly round too. Like these seeds are like, dude, they're huge, man. I'm
Those
telling
are
you. I'm like,
peppercorns, man.
let me get over here to where I'm regular light. Yeah, dude, they're
Massive.
fatty. And they're gray spotted. There's gray spots. Dude, they're so cool looking. Like I could just rattle these all together and you'd be able to pick them out. They don't look nothing alike. They're like gray. And they're all like that. So it's not like maybe they were sitting in the pods that were green, that were huge. I could see that there was a big seed in it, but it's fully still in sugar. I took videos. I have videos of the buds. I took video of it. I took pictures of the buds. Everything I could document these giant plants at a watt. You know what I'm saying? For me, that's like I was like, luck, bro. I was told the kid, dude, you're a player, bro. I love you because you just hooked me up something to me that was cool. I was like a kid in a candy store there. Do you kidding me, dude? And then, the Buddha wanted genetics. He's like, oh, I want to grow some West Coast stuff, some sticky. I was like, right on. And I had pack on me, so I gave him those. And then he wanted to puff. So my buddy that showed me the watt, he had smoke. So he took off with the monk into the watt to go burn, I guess. That which was cool. But when they were taking off, I asked the Buddha, I was like, hey, dude, can I take the millet? Can I take more millet? Okay. And he's like, dude, knock yourself out. His buddy told me, yeah, you can take all you want. Oh man, at that point, I just like took a couple more pictures before I just like literally just hand stripped every lateral. I just like would take it and I just like strip it and I just put it in my bag, like green and all leaves. And then I was taking the tips of the flowers, which I still have here. Where's that flower bowl, sweetie pie? I kept the flowers, dude. The tips, they didn't dry out to be much because it looked like it went in a re-veg. I don't know what it was doing, dude. But it had trichomes and it had these little nugs at the tips of the branch. I mean, listen to the beans. If you want to just know one thing, you can know the sound of like the weight of a bean when it drops. Listen to these things. They're so heavy. It's amazing. You can almost like fling them at your forehead and you'd be like, ouch. But here's like.
Weaponized. Yeah.
So it's like they're all in there. The beans are still in there, just little nugs. And I see no foxtail. They were like They were the structure. I have it on video. You can see the lateral. I tried to get the whole lateral. What's like, man, it is like a structure of an OG structure. It's like, like a Christmas tree ish. And then the way the bud sites were set up out the laterals were like, just they're poppity pops. They weren't none of that really that foxtail. At the end of the branch was just a bud, like normal. But they were, like I said, I'm not gonna say they were like banging density and looking fire. I mean, they look good, they're color, but they're just small, And there's no mango in the smell. See, that's another thing. Here, finally, there's a new smell, and it smells like I was telling it smells like almost like a black licorice cough syrup. Be sweet though. I can't explain it, dude. This is a funky smell. It doesn't smell. It's not mango. I don't know what it is. Like I said, you'll see. I'll give you. You just go run these things, man. You better run them somewhere where they got room to boom. Outdoor, obviously. Right?
Well, I want to run them both in the greenhouse, and then we'll run some on the outdoor.
Right on.
I'm assuming those are Myrcene dominant then. The mangoes.
The what?
Those mangoes are probably Myrcene dominant.
Yeah, but I don't know. The mango is rampant, though. I tell you that there's more mango smell here than any other smell in cannabis. I believe the mango takes the cake on.
I don't know. I haven't found it to be high in mercy. Like it's not stony in that same way. So if it is, it has something else that's counterbalancing. It doesn't have that like Afghan or Paki like knock.
I just because like I know the mango is listed under one of the Myrcene one, so I assumed that it would be that. I just assumed it would be Myrcene dominant, but yeah, maybe it is stabilized by something else in there, so it's not as
One or the other.
Yeah,
I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that it doesn't have that same feeling in what you
knockdown. Yeah, okay, very cool.
That Myrcene dominant stuff. It definitely tastes mangoey though. We have a male right now that's actually great. Kanatai has smelled it. It's just really mango smelling, like mango, like fruit cup kind of thing.
Yeah, there's certain mangoes here that smells you get that are like, some are like that real sweet, almost like a finish, that yellow mango, that real sweet, where it, it's just sugar. And then you get that other mangoes here that are almost like a sour. I'm not gonna say like a sour, like as in sour diesel sour. I'm talking like a young mango smell, so to speak. Right, Bing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's different mangoes. Just mango is a lot of smell, but some of that younger mango smells amazing too. I smell like wreck smells out here that I swear they're not crossed. But I'm not saying it's like them. It's kind of like in that direction. So I've smelled and the Thai stuff out here. Weird stuff, man. Lots of fruits though. I think this place takes the cake in types of fruits: bananas, pineapples, mango, as well as peach. And I mean, you get smells out here, man. Bubble gum.
You guys have guava there?
Cotton candy. Do this one right here. Where is this one plant? Well, hanging behind me. This is stupid. I gotta save you some so you can smell it. Potent, because I'm telling you, it just don't smell like there's not mango in it, and it's like I told my wife, what did you think about this thing? It smells like to me like
What?
This thing. It smells like now it's changing. See, the cures come off. See, finally, the longer it cures, the better.
You can work.
Yeah, I'm not saying about that. I'm talking about the smell. The smell is
What about it saying?
it smells like orange tang with cotton candy. Like if you poured orange tang in the cotton candy thing, and that's like the smell that you can smell cotton candy a mile away when you're walking by. It's hitting up the circus or the fair. You're walking by, you smell cotton candy. So if at least I can, my nose, I got a sensitive nose. So, but this stuff here and the structure's not the structure. I'm not going to say the production because of course it's just like there's nothing to it. But the smell that comes out of this, and there's no beans. I think I found one, I think, and I'm not sure if that was out of something else. I was twisting here, so I'm not going to legitimately think it's out of here. But I wish I had beans from this. The kid dropped us off. He did a video. Gave my wife a video that he's on his way here, and his buddy is on the back doing a video holding these big branches hanging off the back of the scooter, and they're just flying down some back country road, and they said they're like en route, we're on our way, and then like 10 minutes later they come in with these big old branches, and it's this stuff.
You know where you were?
And it reeked as soon as because I got my fan right there, right? I got my fan. As soon as they walked in the door, dude, I smelled that. I was like, damn, dude, what the fuck is that? Because it wasn't mango. I was like, what the fuck is that smell? It don't smell like.
You know what do you work for?
What does he do?
Cupid,
Oh yeah, he's a butcher, he's a butcher. But over here, you start with it alive. So
he's finished the job and he come here want to get cancer cookie.
Oh.
So he bring me that.
Yeah, he comes through and gets smoked. It's funny. Right. But yeah, man, this stuff here smells really good. I don't know. It's definitely different. It's not your average, but of course.
I think it's over this one like you.
What?
Along this one.
Yeah.
When you smoke it, you can do things, like energy thing. But
yeah, she said energy.
You just don't like sit like.
Yeah, no couch lock.
You
smoke it and get out there and put the dirt or whatever your thing.
Yeah. They're good a daytime.
Yeah,
So,
good daytime smoke, she says.
but depend what.
All right, well,
Different.
anything else you guys wanted to touch on before we wrap up the show, guys?
No, I'm good, bro. I'm good.
Wes or Wes?
Good to go,
Be
man.
sure to check out our.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Be sure to check out our other show, That Smoke Show. Like, subscribe. You can find it on most podcasting platforms. Like, subscribe. And where can people get and you can find me on Instagram as well. Where can people get a hold of you, Cannabis Seeds?
You should catch us over Instagram. Cannabis Seeds at Instagram. What's up there, Infamous?
Just kicking it. I didn't figure you guys wanted to watch me do all the dirty chores I've been up to today, so I had the camera off. But I've been in tune. Find us over on Instagram at infamousgardens_V2.0. Having lots of drama, so I can't follow anyone. So if I don't follow you back, it's nothing personal. They're giving me grief. So get us over there or find us on YouTube now. We're on YouTube under Infamous Gardens. So make sure you go over and toss us a like and subscribe over there as well for some new upcoming content. So check it out. And Potent, where can people find you, Your Majesty?
You can find me on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, all the things. Also be sure to check out, we have a sale right now on all of our classes, apmjclass.com, thepestclass.com, nutrientclass.com. All of them are on sale right now. If you use the coupon code FALL, FALL, you can save money now through Krampus. So I thought rather than doing a Black Friday sale and promoting capitalism and all that stuff, it'd be more fun to promote Krampus. So it's our Thanksgiving and Krampus sale. So
Yes,
Nice.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to do one more thing. I forgot because I'm trying to get subscribers, y'all. I can't tie it. It's on YouTube now, and I'm trying to get enough subscribers now so I can start sharing some stuff on there. So I appreciate if y'all hit that up.
Awesome. I'll get those both in the description so that people have a link for those.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And be sure to check out our episode yesterday from the Dat Smoke Show. We had quite a long episode with a whole bunch of people. I think we had 10 people on for most of the show.
It was great yesterday. It was killer. But I was so cooked after it wrote my day off. I did not get much shit done after blazing for like 5 hours.
Yeah, it was definitely a good one and a long one. It was like 4.5 hours. So if you need something to listen to,
4:44.
Yeah, we had lots of good laughs and tons of good grow info, and it was just a good episode. So check that out as well. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for